The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. When Jesus had crossed again in the boat to the other side, a large crowd gathered around him, and he stayed close to the sea. One of the synagogue officials, named Jairus, came forward. Seeing him, he fell at his feet and pleaded earnestly with him, saying, "My daughter is at the point of death. Please, come lay your hands on her, that she may get well and live." So Jesus went off with him, and a large crowd followed him and pressed him. While he was speaking, people from the synagogue's official's house arrived and said, "Your daughter has died. Why trouble the teacher any longer?" Disregarding the message that was reported, Jesus said to the synagogue official, "Do not be afraid, just have faith." He did not allow anyone to accompany him inside, except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they arrived at the house of the synagogue official, he caught sight of a commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. So he went in and said to them, "Why this commotion, weeping? The child is not dead, but asleep." And they ridiculed him. Then he put them all out. He took along the child's father and mother and those who were with him, and entered the room where the child was. He took her by the hand and said to her, "Talitha koum," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, arise." The girl, a child of 12, arose immediately and walked around. At that, they were utterly astounded. He gave strict orders that no one should know this, and he said that she should be given something to eat. The Gospel of the Lord. Good morning. Today our Gospel gives us the account of this curing of the synagogue official Jairus' daughter. And it also, in the other longer form, gives us the account of the woman who was healed of a hemorrhage that had lasted many, many years. And so we have examples of Jesus curing people, perhaps raising this girl from the dead, and bringing happiness to people who had otherwise been living in fear. So I have to ask myself, as I always do when I'm reading the scriptures and contemplating them, what does this have to do with us? What is the story of this synagogue official and the woman with the hemorrhage? What does it have to do with us? What does the gospel have to do with us? What does the good news of Jesus, the preaching of Jesus, the miracles of Jesus, the good works of Jesus, the reaction of those who witnessed these things, and the early disciples of Jesus, what does this have to do with us? Well, I think quite a bit, actually. Jesus tells the synagogue official at one point, when he's living in a tremendous amount of fear, he thinks that his daughter is going to die. He's pretty sure that the end is near for her, and he's like taking desperate measures, going to Jesus, who he doesn't even necessarily share all the same values with. Remember, he was a synagogue official, and Jesus was often at odds with such people. But here he was, asking Jesus to intercede, to do something. And Jesus says to him, "Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. Just have faith. Do not be afraid. Just have faith. How many times in our lives have we needed to hear such an admonition? How many times have the things that have come our way in life, or major moments where things have been difficult or challenging or perhaps even grief-stricken, how many times have we maybe needed to hear that kind of word? Do not be afraid, just have faith. Certainly easier said than done. Just today I went to the hospital and I visited a young man who has a serious illness. He's in an advanced stage of cancer and seeking treatment for that. To be honest, it doesn't look good. But we had a wonderful conversation, and I told him, and we agreed, that as people of faith, the best thing to do is to hold on to hope, to be positive, to trust. Again, not necessarily as easy to do as to say. But I wanted to say to my friend the words that Jesus told Jairus. Do not be afraid, just have faith. It doesn't seem like enough to say such a thing in a situation like that, but really that's what we ought to do. I remember 4 years ago when the COVID virus was spreading all around the world very rapidly, and everybody was afraid, and suddenly everything was on lockdown. I happened to be a pastor of a parish at that time, and suddenly, overnight, we were locked down. No masses, no confessions, no office hours, no nothing. Stay at home, shelter. This created quite a challenge for us as people in pastoral ministry, because suddenly we weren't able to visit people in their homes who were in need of sacraments, or perhaps going to hospitals to give people the last rites, and all of those kind of normal things that we would normally do as pastoral ministers suddenly was shut down. People were afraid to come out of their houses. People were afraid to even be near their family members. It was horrible. We posted a sign on our church marquee, on the sign out front of the church. We posted the sign that said, "Do not be afraid, God is with us." Do not be afraid, God is with us. It's kind of another way of saying, do not be afraid, just have faith. It's hard to have faith in moments of difficulty. Sometimes things seem hopeless. Sometimes we want to give up. Sometimes we can't see past the present difficulty or into tomorrow. But the message of our gospel today is pretty clear. God will provide. God will take care of us. God knows what to do. And we need to simply have faith that all will be well. Easier said than done. But let's imagine for a moment the feelings and sentiment of those who stood at the foot of the cross watching Jesus die on Good Friday. I don't imagine that they were too positive at that moment, and perhaps were tempted to lose faith, were tempted to lose hope. It wasn't supposed to happen that way, they probably thought. And yet somehow past that trial, past that difficulty, there was a resurrection. Jesus rose to new life. He conquered sin and death. He promised those who follow him that all would be well. Easier said than done. Let's encourage one another today as we contemplate these gospel stories. My sisters, my brothers, when there are trials and difficulties in life, do not be afraid, but just have faith. Praised be Jesus Christ, now and forever. Amen.